Hello everybody, Andy here again. The other day I did a particular video and because I'd mentioned on Twitter about putting a subject, just saying to people, please send me a title, just for something to do, just give me something to think about, send me a title or an idea for a video, and I'll see what we come up with, just turning on the camera and speaking. Well, Jen Blizzy Kitty sent me one and about been doing things crazily before you're 50 years of age, which I've done that one, and then a couple of days after that I got another good suggestion from an old friend of mine, and his one was, if you were an MP, would you be fiddling your expenses too? Now, for those of us in Britain, unless you've been living in a cave or under a rock for the last 3 or 4 weeks or something like that, you'll know exactly what Andy was talking about. But for those of you who may be unaware, just a very brief outline. We've had a big political scandal over here which has claimed the sort of scalps of a few MPs and the Speaker of the House of Commons as well. To do with MPs' expenses and the expenses and allowances that they get, some that they're allowed to get and some that maybe been fiddling and more maybe applying for things and claiming for things that are a bit silly. We've had people, MPs, claiming for duck houses and for the cleaning of moats, and they have this sort of scheme where they can have 2 different homes because of where they live and where they have to have a place in London as well to do their parliamentary business, and then they sort of change the houses because then they can claim money for this and that. And so a very big thing that's going on, and I'm sure everybody in the UK has got an opinion on this, and it's one of those topics that I've been thinking about tackling either here or maybe even doing a blog about it, but I haven't got round to doing it at all. And then Andy comes up with this topic, and I thought, let's give this a go then, because it's been going on for a while now, and some people are probably getting sick to death with it, because a national newspaper over here managed to get the details. These details were supposed to be published in July of this year anyway, but they managed to get hold of them and started publishing them earlier and putting the expenses claims out there, and there's some pretty amazing stuff in there. And first off, one of the things, because Andy was asking if I was an MP, would I be fiddling? I'd like to think I wouldn't be fiddling. But one thing that needs to be said is that, if we're honest, not many MPs were actually fiddling their expenses. There aren't many who've actually done anything wrong. Yes, the rules are completely wrong. The way that the things are set up are completely wrong. People should not be allowed to claim for some of the frivolous and ridiculous things that they are being claimed for, and also some of the MPs should not even have attempted to claim for some of these things, like dog food and cat food and the cleaning services and cleaning your moat. The idea of these allowances, I'm sure it's the same in lots of other countries, MPs, parliamentarians, your politicians, whatever, the elected ones, are allowed to have allowances, but they are supposed to be to allow them, to enable them to do their job properly. Yes, they might need stationery, they might need clerical assistance or offices, or even a second home of some sort, to enable them, an office or something like that, somewhere to stay when they're in London doing their parliamentary business before they have to go back to their constituencies. I think it has to be recognised that we do need some sort of system, because the MPs themselves, regardless of what you think, don't actually get paid that amount of money. They might get paid a lot more money than I do or than you do, but when you look at it in the big scheme of things, the amount of money that they do get isn't that great. Yes, and that's where all these allowances come in, and a lot of them have thought about them as an extra way, as almost as their right, almost as an extra part of their salary. Like we look at bankers were getting bonuses, and they were guaranteed bonuses, more or less. Doesn't matter what they did, they expected them. Even when they failed, even when they sort of let people down and the banks went bust, they still think, well, I deserve my bonus, it's part of my contract. And that's the way that the MPs have thought about it. Not everybody has been excessively claiming things, shall we say. A lot of people live fairly frugally, I suppose, and don't claim anywhere near as much, and fortunately everybody's getting tarred with the same brush. So that's the first thing I wanted to say, was that a lot of people, very few people I think, are actually going to get caught out of this who've actually lied or whatever. The main culprits in some ways are the people, I think it's what they call the fees office over here, are the office or whatever, the department within the Houses of Parliament, which actually oversee all of these expense claims, etc. The MPs have to put the expense claims in, and then the fees office will say, yep, fine, that one's okay, or no, you can't have that. as I said earlier, I despair sometimes at some of the things that the MPs have applied for and either haven't got the full amount for, or they've been turned back. And even some of the things that have been allowed, you think to yourself, now I would never in a million years even think about claiming things like that. For example, I think it was the Home Secretary over here, one of the biggest politicians in the land, who claimed for a bath plug which cost less than £1. Things like that. People were claiming, for, as I said, for dog food and cat food. But I hardly see how these are essential to do their parliamentary business. Little things like that. But they were allowed to get away with them. They've been allowed to get away with this for a number of years. I don't know how many years. And it's the same with anything. It's human nature. If you're allowed to get away with something, you'll push the boundaries a little bit more the next time. Now, I'm not squeaky clean. Nobody in this world is squeaky clean. And a lot of the journalists that have been reporting this have been absolutely gleeful and jumping for joy that they can sell a load of newspapers by putting all this stuff into the press, and quite rightly so. I have no problem with that at all. This stuff needs to be out there. A debate needs to happen, and a debate is happening, believe me. But most of these journalists out there probably earn a lot more money than any of the politicians that are in the House of Parliament, for a start. And they've got great big expense accounts as well. So they are hardly squeaky clean themselves. And I think they can see, you know, they need to be careful. It's that sort of people who live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. And that was a biblical reference of he who is out without sin should cast the first stone, or something along those lines. Now, none of us, I don't think, if we can sort of hold our hands up and say that we have never done anything that would be outside the law in this type of thing. Most of us, in some way or another, have fiddled our taxes. It might only be a little bit. How many people can honestly say, hand on heart, that at work they haven't liberated something from the stationery cupboard? They haven't taken a couple of pens here and there, or, you know, this, that and the other. How many people, when they've had a workman come to their house and the workman said, well, how much is that going to cost? Well, if you do it for this, I'll knock, you know, if you do it for cash, I'll knock £20 off, or I'll knock £30 off. How many of you have said, oh no, I'll do it the proper way because the taxman should get all of that money? We've all done it, haven't we? Every single one of us have done it. It's human nature. I'd like to think that if I was an MP, I would be there. I would be claiming what I could rightfully claim for. I wouldn't have a moat in the first place to have someone to come and clean it, and I'd like to think that I wouldn't claim for some of these other things. For example, someone in a house wanted something like bookcases, and this is an MP who I have a lot of respect for, one of the old guard, should we say, Labour MP, socialist therefore, supposedly, who wanted something like £8,000 for a set of bookcases for his house. But yes, you need bookcases, I can see that, but do you really need to spend £8,000 on a set of bookcases? This isn't supposed to be an investment, this is supposed to be something that enables you to do your job correctly. So I'm sure this is the same. One thing I would say is that there's probably a lot of countries out there who are thinking, cool, we're getting away with this, because we are fairly lucky, I think, in this country, is that our politicians generally are not corrupt. And there might be ways that we might think that they're fiddling their expenses, like this big saga that's going on at the moment, and it's opened, as I said, a big debate about the way that things are going. It's got a lot of people interested in politics, and if anything comes out of it, that might be a good thing, that people are now asking questions of their politicians and maybe getting involved, type of thing, and it's made the politicians think a little bit more about what they need to do. And it's, as I said, this may change things for the good, but in other countries, I know of other countries where you have got convicted, corrupt politicians, either as prime ministers, as presidents, or something like that as well. Is that correct? I can name a couple, but I'm not going to, just in case I've got it wrong. But we all know of people who've done this in the past. I know of people who've been convicted for rape and God knows what else in other countries as well. They're still there running the country, and I'd like to think that our system is a little bit better than that. It's not perfect by any means. The whole system does need looking at. The whole parliamentary process, the whole sort of party political process, the fact that having parties, I think, completely ruins any open debates, but that's another issue altogether. The problem with our laws and regulations is that they're so old. If you look at France, you look at America, most of their laws, the brand new laws that they got, came out of a revolution, came out of a brand new start, whether it be the French Revolution or the War of Independence in America. All of your laws in those countries have come about in the last couple of 100 years. Our laws go back to 1200, 1100. A lot of the laws that we still got, a lot of the customs we still got, the procedures that we've got, go back to those sort of times, or at least to medieval times. It's great, it's quaint, it looks lovely. People have got all these great, you know, the House of Lords have got all these wigs on, and they've got all these robes and things like that. All the ceremony draws the people in, draws all the, you know, the tourists in, and they take their pictures. Yes, but is that really a way to run a modern democracy? Is that the way to run a modern country? So that's my thoughts. As I said, I think, you know, we're maybe looking at this, people are going absolutely mad here. They'll be hanging politicians. I heard something on the radio the other day about looking about the peasants' revolt which happened here in Britain in the 1300s, and how they sort of strung up politicians and, you know, chopped their heads off and put their heads on, you know, London Bridge as it was then. And if the chance came now, I think some people would feel the same. But do they know the whole story? Have they thought about this? As I said, whatever we think, a lot of these people weren't breaking the law or aren't breaking the law. Yes, I think those laws should be tightened, so they would have been, but they weren't at the time. You can't backtrack on this type of thing. The laws need to be changed, the laws need to be looked at completely, but then so does the whole political system, in my opinion. Something needs to change. Maybe this is something, the one spark that might set a ball rolling. But what the trouble at the moment is, it's usually the MPs that vote for these things. It's like turkeys voting for Christmas. It ain't going to happen unless things are taken out and they're done independently. But then we go back to what I said before about our antiquated laws, our antiquated ways of procedures in Parliament, etc. As I said, it's great for the historical value. I'm very proud of the fact that our history goes back that way, and we formed democracy, and it's a democracy which has been copied in other great countries in the world as well. But we need to modernise, we need to move with the times, we need to change it. Have the ceremony there for certain aspects of it, but when it comes down to the nitty-gritty of making laws, running the country, etc., we need to be modern. We need to get with the times, I think, and get in touch. And that's one of the things that most of the politicians have been caught at recently, is that they seem to be so out of touch. They think what they've been doing, although it hasn't been wrong, is correct. They can't see why they shouldn't claim for dog food or cat food, or to clean their moats, or for £8,000 sets of bookcases and things like that. They don't seem to realise why people are up in arms about it. And if they were more open and transparent, because that's another issue, effectively the MPs have been trying to stifle this information coming out. We have a recent Freedom of Information Act, which you've had in other countries for years and years and years. We haven't had that for very long, and there's still people trying to stop these things coming out. Now it's come out into the open, that might change things as well, but all the MPs, and they're standing up saying, oh, we're sorry, this system needs to be changed. Why didn't they change it all the years ago? They've only started to do it now because me and you and all the women and men on the street have actually found out, the real people in the country have actually found out what really goes on. So things need to change, certainly, but they should have been changed a long time ago. The time for secrecy is over, the time for modernisation is now. So that's my point. But if I was an MP, I'd be claiming expenses, because I probably need to, but I'd like to think that I would be a bit more squeaky clean than others. But as I said earlier, I'm not perfect, and I doubt if you're perfect as well. Put your hand on your heart, have a think about it. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. I hope that's answered your question, Andy, if you're watching this. And good question. Any more ideas, please send them in, and I'll see what I can do, see if I can come up with something. Anyway, thanks for your time. I'll speak to you again soon. Goodbye.